Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Freedom to Formulate podcast. I'm your host, David Barbash. Super excited today to welcome my wonderful guest, Alicia Weber. She is the board-certified holistic nutritionist and founder of Weber Therapeutic Nutrition, a high-touch functional nutrition practice serving midlife high performers who want to restore energy, sharpen cognition, and protect long-term metabolic and brain health. And it's interesting. First of all, welcome, Alicia. Nice to see you.
Thanks so much, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Interesting. With your background, I saw a background in journalism and litigation. Now, on the surface, you think, before you transition into obviously holistic, as a holistic nutritionist, that's investigative side on the journalism side, and I think the litigation side of it probably serve you well when you're diving into complex patient issues. How did that sort of translate, and maybe give us a little bit of a background into how you dove into that investigative sort of rigor that helped you dive into looking at the underlying issues in patients?
Absolutely. So, like most people's paths, it wasn't very linear. There were different life circumstances all along that brought me to the opportunities that I feel like I capitalized on. Knew that I really wanted to go into journalism from a young age. That really appealed to me. The side of telling people's stories was very important to me, but also getting the facts correct, making sure that I did include both sides. That was back in the heyday when we really made it a goal to have an unbiased opinion, unbiased view in these stories. So that really informed me early on. And then when I ended up changing careers and going into litigation, the fact that you needed evidence for what it was that your client was saying, that was also informative. Plus, junior lawyers don't know how to write. So being able to look at what they were trying to put together and communicate, being able to massage that a little bit, and making sure though that they had the evidence behind it. What was the case law that they were citing and that was going to be informing this argument that they were giving. That really helped me when it came to looking at what it was in the nutrition world that I was trying to understand fully and also get behind. Because as you know, we throw around words like evidence-based, science-based, but the science is not without flaws. It's ever evolving. It is a bit of an art form and something that you're practicing. So you don't get it right today and it's right forever and ever. We will be discovering new things and that will inform new opinions. So that combination, I feel like, is really helpful for me. And it helps me get to the why behind that. Okay, so this client is experiencing this symptom, but what's underneath that? And then what actually preceded that? And how can we then create an intervention or a protocol that will help rectify that to bring the body back into homeostasis? Because that's really what it's all about. I firmly believe the body will heal itself if we remove those barriers that we've put in place through diet and lifestyle.
Yeah, and I think, the signals the body provides, and it's if we mask those signals and we ignore those signals, that's where we run into issues. And that could happen with medications. That could happen also on the natural side if we're not doing the testing to find out what we truly are deficient in or what we have excess of. We're just randomly throwing things against the wall to see if they stick. In your personal case, you go from this background in journalism and litigation and you dive into this in sort of investigative rigor, bringing that to nutritional science. You also, by the way, you serve on the board of the directors for the Aging Mind Foundation, which we'll get into a little bit later, which supporting research into the causes and cures of Alzheimer's disease. And you're also the board of directors of Econautics, an initiative to strengthen the communities around Fort Worth through living laboratory food system. So focus not on just the testing, not just on either supplementation or if needed, traditional medicine, but looking at living food systems and providing really the basis for what the body needs, providing the fuel for the cells. Provide a little bit of background of how you became now immersed into this precision medicine that you have in your own practice and maybe your own story, you know?
And I will start with that. So again, when we talked about the signaling and the symptoms that are showing up in our body, so much of the time I feel like, especially when I'm working with my clients who are in midlife, they may have been dealing with something for so long that that is their norm. Maybe it's digestive issues that they thought, well, everybody feels this way after they eat, or whatever it is that maybe they've just kind of ignored because it served them well to just simply push through whatever that was. Well, for me, it came to a head when I have three grown children, but when I was pregnant with my third child, so this would have been about 25 years ago, I did the standard oral glucose tolerance test that they do with every single
Mhm.
pregnancy, and it came back borderline, but they said, we're going to go ahead and treat this like gestational diabetes. Well, I had no idea what they were talking about. And in my ignorance, said something foolish like, do I look like I have diabetes? Well, that is absurd. I mean, nobody can look
Yeah.
at you and understand what's going on in your metabolic health. So I got quickly educated because that was the way that I knew to cope with something that was slightly scary, but definitely unknown, and worked with a dietitian at that point and was able to get it under control. My son was born at a normal weight, very healthy, and things were good for a while. And then I noticed as I approached menopause and with the hormonal fluctuations and that sort of thing, that the diabetes, the blood glucose numbers were creeping back up. And subsequently, over the years, I have a situation where I'm aware that I'm probably borderline pre-diabetic again. So I've just got to be very intentional about that. But I had always had in my mind an interest in health and wellness. And so I was at a place in my life where I wasn't as happy about being in the legal field. There were things going on with the court systems. And I thought, wow, if I can go back to school, get a degree that would support the science side of it, because I didn't get a lot of that in journalism, as you can probably imagine. So I went back and got another degree, and this one in community health. So
Mhm.
it's really just I really enjoy what it is that I do. And I especially want people to know that it's not too late to make changes in life, but they need to, again, pay attention to what their body is telling them, but also look at how their parents are aging. Some of
Yeah.
what we have to look forward to is genetic, but a lot of it still is within our control and would be termed those modifiable variables that we can pull levers one way or the other based on what's on our plate and how we're moving our body. And I think that's just so very important. So I got into this, started Weber Therapeutic Nutrition, and then found myself in that world of, okay, well, we know that Alzheimer's, they're really calling type 3 diabetes because it is such a result of metabolic dysfunction over the years. So I became involved with the Aging Mind Foundation and have been thrilled to see what these professional investigators are paying attention to and where they're coming along with their studies about how to tackle it. But again, the overarching seems to be metabolic health. And I think that really is kind of the message that I want people to come away with is one, a lot of it is in their control, and two, they need to pay attention to it. And even if it's not showing up as symptoms, then there are markers that they can look at in the standard metabolic panel that will give them some clues to what's going on. There are some other tests that maybe need to be included, and I'm talking just regular blood tests that they could have run if they are properly informed and can talk to their doctor about it. And I think that's really exciting too. So we look at that, and then just to touch on economics, you brought that up. The fact that we've come away from the idea of even taking a little bit of land and growing foods ourselves and how fun that can be just to go out and yes, it might be a bit of a more expensive zucchini than what you can get at the store, but even having that skill, knowing where your food comes from
Comes from you.
goes a long way towards, again, this metabolic health that we're talking about.
And also, yeah, and also the carbon footprint and, do you want to eat a zucchini that's being transported 3,000 miles cross country from coast to coast may be necessary. You don't know what chemicals are on it, what the soil was like, the environment, where you're controlling the soil that it's grown in. If you want to grow it in your own greenhouse, or grow it in your own backyard, or support a local farm if you don't do your own growing. Use if
Right.
you are going to use a farm, use a local farm, support a local farmer, or maybe if you can't even go to a farm, go down to a local farmer's market and buy from the local farmer that has organic zucchini, and it's only 8 kilometers or 5 miles away from your house. So
Absolutely.
we applaud what you're doing because it is a holistic thing. You can't separate in holistic medicine and holistic thoughts and ancient culture. There was no difference between the farmer, the soil, the microbe in the soil, the moon position, everything was connected. And that's why biodynamic farming connects. Everything is connected. No difference.
Right. And along that same theme, we're learning that the way allopathic Western medicine is
Mhm.
designed is very siloed. So we're looking at either the brain or the gut or the heart. And that's really missing.
And ignoring that, the gut brain axis,
It's
which
all connected.
all connected. We talked about metabolic syndrome. Now, maybe dive into unmasking metabolic syndrome through doing like testing, like functional medicine testing, and why the importance of that, and maybe share with the viewers of why it's so important to do a more of a deeper dive when it comes to testing, like a functional medicine type of testing.
Sure. So there are ways that you can go about it with the companies that are exclusively functional medicine. So these are the tests that you do not get in your normal doctor's office. And I'm talking about like a GI map, which is the stool test, looking at what's
Yeah.
going on in the microbiome. That's something that I use in my practice because it's very informative. Or an oat test, an organic acid test.
Yeah.
Again, you can't walk into your doctor's office and get that information. But if people are a little nervous about wanting to work with somebody where they're paying for these tests, because they do take a certain amount of investment in order to
Yes,
get
they
that
do.
information, then I really try and say, start with what your doctor and your insurance can cover. And so they'll say, okay, well, this is primarily the metabolic panel that they run. Great. Does it include an HbA1c? Sometimes it doesn't, which is really shocking to me. And
Which
of
is,
course,
yeah, very shocking. Yeah.
3-month average for what your blood glucose
Mhm.
number is doing. They'll run a fasting glucose, but that's one point in time that particular morning, and that is really just meaningless. I mean, it really is. And then
Absolutely.
not only that, but the insulin, that's another one that is very inexpensive. Insurance will cover that, and it tells you a lot more than just your HbA1c and your glucose. So I said, okay, great. Panel's looking good, but let's add in the C-reactive protein. Let's see where inflammation is.
Inflammatory markers super important.
Right. There are some other markers that we can add on to a traditional metabolic panel that will really look for things for us, because that's going to give us information. What are your liver markers doing? Things like that, that are long before you start to feel different. But I do, when clients come to me and say they're feeling a little fluffy or a little soft, or just kind of like the jeans aren't fitting like they used to. That is something that we can work with, because it is telling me that there's probably some inflammation there. And we have them also describing their sleepless nights, their very stressful job. So those are, again, those signals that we can't ignore. And so if they're coming to me with that, sleep wake cycles are off. And again, especially women between like 35 to 55. And
Mhm.
often we're talking about perimenopause and all the hormonal cascade that goes on there. I do like a Dutch test for hormone testing.
Yeah.
That is something that, again, it's just such helpful information. And you can do a blood test at one point in time. But if you're talking about a Dutch test, then that's what the hormones are doing over a longer period of
Longer
time,
period of time for sure.
either 24 hours. Sometimes you're looking at over a 30-day period. And that really gives you a good idea of what's going on. And then you can really work with that. You can then come up with an intervention rather than just kind of shotgunning something and going, well, based on this one marker that was this one day on this 1 hour, we can then approach it from a standpoint of let's support what the body wants to do and do it this way with either supplements or in the hormone case, hormone replacement therapy, things.
So, with this personalized testing that we're talking about for an individual patient, because everybody's got unique biochemistry,
They
unique
do.
bioenergetics, unique environment, epigenetics will show that the environment can have an influence. How did this personalized focus that we have here at Personalized Nutrients, what sort of drew you to diving into personalized supplements and maybe testing out before you launched? We'll talk about your good glucose, which you've recently launched. What led you to maybe looking at a personalized approach and maybe trying to find out if that supplementation would work for you, building it and you going the deeper investigative dive and seeing if it would work for you through our platform? Tell the audience about that.
Sure. So again, when I was looking at something to support the reversal of prediabetes, and I had already looked at a dietary approach, I discovered for me at this time in life, I was actually a little undermuscled. So I knew that I needed to incorporate weight training like we
So
all need to be doing. But for me, it was showing up this way and even osteoporosis, which we can get to later, but it all has that metabolic component to it. So I thought, okay, let's dial in the weight training, let's dial in the diet, but what else can we do to move the needle on this? And depending on who you're listening to and what space, it's berberine is the answer. You take that, all your problems are solved. No, you really need to make sure that you've got ALA. Okay, great. Really, let's have some biotin in there. So I was looking at these supplements that were already formulated and thinking, I'm looking at the literature, I'm doing my own research. This is a wonderful compound too, but it's only found in this one supplement. And then this other supplement has these three, but I want this too. So it was really that combination of looking at the literature myself, listening to some other experts, and then getting on the phone with you and saying, this is what I really want to do. Help me put something together that's really going to, again, be effective, be efficient, and something that I know I'm going to be buying. So, and using. So let's put something together. And then the beauty of it was being able to test it, my N of one over time. I wasn't relying on, again, some other company, wondering where their ingredients were coming from. I knew exactly what was going into this supplement, and I knew over time that it was going to be effective.
yeah, and the transparency that we have here is, hey, you want to know where that ingredient came from? Here's a certificate of analysis, and not just rely on that. We had the finished goods testing on the back end. We had the front end testing, third party sending out, literally testing for heavy metals, identity, yeast and mold, all the markers, purity and identity and validation. And as you just said, for all practitioners out there, as well as obviously for the end user, your clients, it's good to know that you tested, you did at least two separate bottles of literally testing out until you got it perfected, where you did the blood work pre and then the blood work post, and you saw the differences. So this is quantifiable. This is not, you're taking a preset supplement and you have no idea if this is going to work or not. Literally, the creator right here, Alicia Weber, literally, this is being tested and proven. She wouldn't launch it. There
That's
you go. Good Glucose by Weber Therapeutic Nutrition. I
yes.
think it's a game changer. Now, you mentioned some of the key ingredients. I know, of course, you mentioned it's not just got the dihydroberberine. It's not just got the alpha lipoic. It's got a wealth of ingredients. You mentioned the biotin, but it's got a handful of ingredients and all in quantifiable therapeutic amounts. So the amounts that are typically found if you're going and buying them separately, literally you would have to actually take, I think we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12, yes, 12 ingredients. And a lot of these are found in other formulas, but not all of them. Typically, you'll be hard pressed to find them in the dosing that they're
Right.
in all the ingredients, and they all have different functionality in there. So really love it. And, obviously you mentioned you're on the board of directors for the Aging Man Foundation. And you mentioned about also with the bones as well. With a lot of osteoporosis in the future, we might have some news to share potentially in the other areas. So we'll see
Right. Right.
further down the
So
line some exciting things.
exactly. So the Aging Mind Foundation is just really exciting being part of this group that is funding Alzheimer's research. I mean, we're plugged into the Center for Brain Health at UTD in Dallas here.
That was right there, yeah.
They are just doing phenomenal things. In fact, they just announced their sleep clinic with Dr. Matthew Walker. Don't know if
Oh,
you're
wow.
familiar with him, but he is here now in Dallas and has a sleep clinic based here. So we're doing good things as far as brain health goes there. And again, the research that's going into all this, all the tauopathies that they're taking a look at. But I just find it interesting when we get in these conversations how it all circles back to metabolic health and what we can be doing.
It absolutely does. And you mentioned already about, looking at circadian rhythms and the sleep cycles. And now it's not just stress. It's not just, your metabolic health, but it's also electromagnetics. So people that are literally leaving their modems on or have a modem close to their inside their bedroom, with these LED lights and sleeping by cell phones or having these smart TVs on. We have to be conscious also of electromagnetic exposure and in the blue light as well, the amount of blue light exposure. So I think that the fact that you're doing a deeper dive into everything is quite amazing. And I came from previously, I've been here 3 years, but previously 10 years, I was with a company that focused on electromagnetics, had a product that focused on the electromagnetics of the brain. So I know currently having a mother-in-law that has vascular dementia, how important it is to be conscious of this gut-brain axis. And most people don't really make that connection. The average person may not even realize or understand the gut-brain axis connection and the importance of knowing the connection and focusing on the gut. And if you focus on the gut, you can then affect the brain because of the signaling.
And it's bi-directional. I think we were taught that
Absolutely. Yeah. We think it's just one direct, but it's
it's
not.
top down, and that's not the case.
Absolutely not.
Whatever's going on in your gut is also signaling to your brain. These are the foods that we're seeking. This is how much dopamine you get. This
Mhm.
is how much serotonin you get. That really is such an important highway of communication.
It is, and us freedom to formulate. We have a lot of the those nutrients there, like the mucuna, like a plant source of dopamine, like for instance with the L-dopa, 98% L-dopa, and we have about almost 400 ingredients in house. But we serve I'm very happy to serve practitioners like yourself, and we are super grateful for people like yourself, Alicia, that are holistic minded because most people just focus on one thing. Some nutritionists just primarily focus on food. The fact that you don't just focus on just food and you don't just focus on supplements and you focus on, lifestyle, you focus on the whole picture environment, epigenetics, genetics. What's the overriding sort of theme you'd want to have people take away from today in terms of your message to the audience?
I think two things. One, I was just reflecting on my background in communication. And when I was referencing tests that your doctors perform versus those that we can do in a functional medicine space, I have always been very transparent with my clients that I will be happy to talk to your doctor anytime. These are the questions that I think you should bring to your doctor. Let us have a dialogue because no one's going to care about their health more than they do. And they need to be advocates for their own health. And so seeking me out is great, but also being a good communicator with your doctor is important too. And if your physician is unwilling to listen to you, that may be a red flag that perhaps you need to go somewhere else if you're not kind of co creating your protocol and moving forward. And then the other thing is, I firmly believe that if our basic needs are being taken care of, we've got housing, we've got clothing, we've got food, then we have a privilege to really be good stewards of this body and this life that we've been given. And I want people to remember that their children are watching, their neighbors are watching, other family members who they don't want to be a burden to. It's really our responsibility and our great privilege to take care of ourselves.
Wow, that's an important message. I think that's a beautiful way to finish up. We're super grateful for you. Um, One of my absolute favorite clients, and
Okay.
we'll look forward to doing another podcast in the future. Maybe we could dive into talking about more, maybe the brain next time, and maybe or bones, because there's so many
Right.
topics within the natural medicine arena. But in the meantime, have a wonderful rest of the week. We appreciate everybody tuning in, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.